Hey, you're listening to the Burnt Out Entrepreneur podcast, where you'll learn why you're feeling so burnt out, some insights and hacks to get you along this entrepreneurial journey. I'm Kylie Yota, former oil and gas manager turned health coach, life coach, and business mentor for female entrepreneurs just like you, and help them heal and recover from burnout. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Burnt Out Entrepreneur. Today, I'm talking with Kerry-Ann Powell. She is the founder of Trafalgar Strategies, and she's a global business strategist, speaker, and champion of small and medium-sized businesses. She has a varied experience of over 20 years as a Washington, D.C. attorney, lobbyist, and fundraiser. Wow. So this positions her as an authority of what it takes to strategically succeed while confronting difficult obstacles. And then after raising $120 million to build the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, she decided to launch her company, which is Trafalgar Strategy. Sometimes running a business can feel like managing a chaotic tornado. Don't raise your hand if this is you. But she helps business owners run their companies smoothly so that they can thrive in business and in life. And that's the basis for this podcast, to help you really thrive in your business and avoid the chaos. So welcome, Kerry-Ann.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure.
So for the people who are listening and we're like, should I raise my hand? Should I not? My business feels a little chaotic. Can you just describe or just tell us what types of things in a business would you consider chaos?
Yeah. Well, the truth is, I consider these now, I'm going to list them in a second, but I like to think of them as more like symptoms of chaos, because there's some fundamental things that are actually causing chaos. But we always think that what's happening on the front is actually the chaos, when really, of a truth, it's the symptom that you have bigger issues to deal with. So yes. Some things that I notice, one is, and I'm sure that you've seen this all the time, is a cash problem. If there is a cash problem, if there is inconsistent cash flow, if there is no revenue coming in, if there is an ability to manage cash, something's going on with the cash, that's chaos. Yes, that's a huge symptom of chaos. Another symptom of chaos is the owner wearing too many hats. So they literally cannot walk away from the business without feeling it's going to implode. And that, to me, is a huge symptom of chaos. Another one is, this may sound weird because people are like, well, no, I love my business the way it is. If the business is not scaling, then there's a symptom of chaos, because a business is just like anything in nature. It's either growing or it's dying. Just stagnating is actually a problem. It doesn't mean you have to grow the big tech companies, but there needs to be some amount of scale that's taking place in the business, or else there is some problem, chaos going on underneath the surface. Yeah. And then the fourth one is regarding your teams. Whether or not a person has a team and the team is not performing well, or they built a team early days, but there was no org chart in place. So you kind of hired cousin Susie and Auntie Gwen, and your friend from college, Mike. He's good at social media. No, he's good. She's good at accounting. Now that the business is growing, you guys are stepping to the feet. There's not any true order. That is a huge symptom of chaos. And on the flip side, if you have listeners right now in your audience who are just starting their businesses, or the early days in the business, and they have not hired someone yet, that's a symptom of chaos, because it's a symptom of chaotic mind thinking, because sometimes people don't want to hire because they're worried about the ability to sustain an employee. So those are the four main things that show up big time when there is some chaos happening. But Kylie, here's the thing. Those four things happen to also be the top four reasons why businesses fail. We can't just sit down and be like, well, I got a little bit of cash flow problem. No, you've got a huge problem.
Right. I love it. I like also what you said. If you're not growing, you're dying. There's really no such thing as the energy is always moving and flowing.
Right.
the pond, if we are stagnant water, there's still things happening beneath the surface.
Yes.
In oil and gas, one of the areas that I managed was the effluent treatment plant, which is the water that gets discharged to the ocean. So there's a lot of treating that has to happen before the water allowed back into the environment. So we have to manage that, and we have to aerate the water. We have to keep it moving. Otherwise, bad bacteria starts to grow, and then we can't discharge it.
That is a great analogy. You can picture that vision that you just sort of said, aerating it, moving it, because it's just sitting there. Then it gets a little, I'm not a scientist and I'm not in oil and gas, but I could imagine that it gets a little icky, smells a bit.
It has, because there's die-off that's happening inside the water, and that the smell of death is that smell that you smell when you're passing by a stagnant lake and you're like, oh my goodness, what does that smell? It smells like sewer.
Business is just like nature. It needs to keep growing.
Yes, I love it. So if, say, a client comes in and they have one or maybe all four of these problems, what is your top go-to recommendation for them to how to get rid of the stagnation, and how do they improve their cash flow? And I know every business is different, but what are some of the steps that you kind of walk your clients through to help discover the root issues of the problem?
Well, first we say, let's breathe. Let's breathe. And then, so I have a methodology that I take my clients through. It's these sort of 8 fundamental things that I think are really, or that I've found are really important for particularly small to mid-sized companies to be able to thrive. And the first layer is the basic foundational thing. And within that component, those components that are foundational, there's like 5 within the basic foundation. The first one is, and whether or not anyone's starting out or whether they've been in business for a bit, I always just say, pause. Tell me what your life plan is. Now, maybe they don't have it written all cute and fancy in a gold binder somewhere, but if they can't articulate what their life plan is, what they think their purpose and their vision and their mission, and again, doesn't have to be all that detailed, that deep, but if they can't articulate that, then that's really where we start. Tell me then now, what would be your life plan if you had one, so that we can understand a bit more about where they are, what they want their life to be. And then we go to the business vision, and then we begin to say, does this fit? And if there is no fit, that's one reason why there may be some chaos in the business, because there is no fit. Now, if there is no fit, we don't change the life plan, Kylie, we change the business vision. Because where the life plan is coming from the soul, from the gut, from the internals, yes? So that is more real and more foundational. So then everyone might be listening on the talk and be like, oh my gosh, I've had my business now for 10 years, I've invested all this money. I am not revamping my business vision. Most of the times, honestly, it might just be a 2 millimeter tweak or shift in the business for it to work for your life plan. Sometimes, on rare occasions, but it does happen, there might be a need to do a complete overhaul of the way the business currently is in order to make it work. And then very, very few times, but I have seen it, where you may need to take a look at the business and really just maybe sell it and start something different. But most times it's just a 2 millimeter shift in how the business vision is, so that it can fit into the life plan, so that you can eliminate that amount of chaos and move smoothly into it.
Gosh, that's so good. Oh, and when you said you have a purpose, a vision, a mission for your life, and then the business will fit in. And this is for entrepreneurs. This is also for people who are in full-time corporates still. Does your job fit your life plan? And I know for me, the last 19 years when I was in oil and gas was never a part of my plan. For me, when I was my job, it was never part of my plan. I was recently divorced, single parent, and my mom was like, hey, there's this job opening. I had no idea what an operator was. That's what the job position was. And basically, you run the machinery that makes the gas.
Oh.
Like, sure. And she's like, well, it pays really well and you no experience required. They train you on the job. It's like, well, why not? No, I didn't have any child support. I was a single parent. And then I was trying to apply for these services, but living in my parents' home, they're like, no, you don't qualify because you still live in that home. If I could afford to move out,
I would. See,
I would. But that's why I'm calling you
I know.
to apply for Section 8 so I can afford to move out. It was so backward. Yeah. And when this job opportunity came up, I was like, sure, why not? And the money was really good. It was so good that because I didn't finish my degree because I got pregnant before I got to finish my schooling, I couldn't afford another job.
Right.
Got used to the six-figure income and I just couldn't do it. Yeah. And what finally made me leave and go into full-time entrepreneurship was another full-time gig as an entrepreneur.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, as a contractor, project manager. And I was like, hey, here's the ticket. God opened the door. Sometimes he opens the door, sometimes he opens the window, but he opened the door and I stepped through it. And that was when I was able to finally make my clean break. Because I started multi-level marketing, all different kinds of things, because I knew that oil and gas was not part of my life plan.
Trying these different things to, yes.
So I agree with that 100%. Yeah. And that's why I was feeling burnt out. And as a female in the oil and gas environment, it's a very masculine environment. And my female counterparts, we used to joke, we have to work twice as hard for only half of the recognition. It just became this thing where there was a lot happening, or I took on more in order to prove myself, working twice as hard and only getting half the credit.
Right.
Because, oh, yeah, well, but you're still a woman.
When you start thinking about what was happening at your job and then also the burnout, what were some of the symptoms of chaos, I guess, that you identified, but you kind of like ignored a little bit before it came to a head?
I would say, the one straw that broke the camel's back was physical symptoms in my body. I was falling asleep all the time, and I didn't realize, because this was a pattern that had been going on in my life until I met my current husband. And we were living together, and he's like, why are you always falling asleep? Every time we try to spend time together, you sit down on the couch or we even go to the movies. It's like, you fall asleep. It's like, something's wrong. You should go to the doctor. And then it took that event in order for me to kind of investigate what had led me up to that point. So the symptoms of chaos did not recognize as symptoms of chaos, to your point, until I had that life-altering diagnosis. And I didn't realize that it would be that life-altering at the time. Like, patch me up. Give me, what supplements are you going to give me to heal my body so I can get back in the game? Thought it was some kind of halftime setback. And I, patch me up, coach, put me back in the game. And doctor told me, well, you could go back to that lifestyle. And I did for a little bit until that opportunity opened up for me as a full-time contractor in someone else's business. But he's like, you go back to that lifestyle, you're going to come back to me in a year, and I don't know if I can fix you up. And he didn't say it but using the analogy, I don't know if I can fix you up and put you back in the game again. I have no idea what condition you'll be in a year from now if you keep this up. And it took a lot of life changes, big life changes that had to happen. And even during the healing, I was always busy. And he scolded me. He's like, you're not going to heal. He took me out of work for a couple of months to kind of rest, relax, recuperate, let my body rest and recover, because I had been going, and I was push myself beyond that breaking point. It's like, no, you need to sit down and do nothing.
Talking bed rest right now.
He didn't say bed rest.
Mm-hmm.
He just said, he should have said bed rest, and I would have been like, okay, doctor said bed rest. But he didn't. But that's what I kind of did to myself. I was like, oh, okay. I had to think that this was an actual, because back when I was diagnosed in 2015, burnout wasn't real, was not recognized as a medical diagnosis. And luckily I was seeing a naturopath. Had I saw someone else, they would have just gave me something and put me back in the game. So,
And I think that's what a lot of people do, or it's their perspective when it comes to business. And it's like, okay, yeah, I know I have this problem. After they finally get to the point where it's a really big deal and they finally come to me, initial conversations, they really do think you can kind of have a patch up situation and then they can keep it moving. And I think it's so important to recognize a couple of things you said that I felt were very analogous to what we do here in business. One of them was this idea where it wasn't until your husband mirrored back to you that what you were experiencing was not normal. A lot of times when you're in your business and you've been in it for a bit, you just assume this is normal. If I'm working 24 hours in my business, I can't walk away. That's normal because that's what small businesses do. I can't tell you how many times people are like, well, I run a small business. This is what you're supposed to do. It's chaotic. I'm like, yeah, but not 24 hours chaotic. I mean, there are blips of chaos, and I don't really consider those to be chaos. I think of their sort of growth spurts. Then there is opportunity for there. So if you are experiencing this 24 hours, then that's a problem. But if you don't know what you don't know, I always use this phrase, but fish don't see water, can't see water. So if you're in it and you think that what you're experiencing is normal, but it's not, but sometimes you actually need someone outside of your water to say, hey, this is not normal. Other people are not doing what you're doing, and they're like thriving and they're living and they're going on vacation with their families and they're working on their business more than they're working in their business, and their cash flow, while there might be moments of time when there's negative and blah, 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 for the most part, it's consistent. So when people say, really, that happens? Then they're like, well, then tell me more. But there still is this feeling of patch me up, fix my problem. This must be a sales issue. Let's work through some sales strategy. No, this is a fundamental business operating systems issue, and we need to sort of deal with it from the core down, go up, as opposed to patch me up and send me in. Because in a year, and I've seen it, in a year you'll come back, and now the problem is way more problematic, and we don't know how we're going to fix it because now we have to kind of maybe pull you offline and, those types of things. You got to literally, I had a client where basically she pretty much had to let go of almost all of her team and rebuild again because so much of the problem had now seeped into team morale and lack of productivity and people not in the right seats, but you can't even fit them back in the right seat because the problem had festered. So literally, you have to let everyone go because there's no way to coop the situation and hire new people. You don't want that. Do you know how expensive turnover is? It is a drain on the money in the business. You don't want that. So if you notice there's chaos happening, if there's symptoms of chaos, then get to addressing it immediately so that it doesn't become a bigger problem.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Right. I was talking with my coach yesterday, and he was talking about a bigger problem. You have different levels of business. He was talking about the Small Business Cycle, which is a book that he wrote. And he's like, when you're in stage 3 business, it's harder to make changes. And I was like, smaller ship, smaller rudder. So it's easier to take care of the smaller issues up front. And like they say, right, hire slow, fire fast. And that gets hard, though, when you build a rapport with people and they're part of your team and your team becomes like family. But then it's kind of like same issues that you have in your biological family kind of start showing up in your business family. And it's like, see, when you're not healed from those wounds.
We could go on a whole nother conversation around that, because the reality is, what I've noticed is there's so many people who are bringing those roles that they created and they had to operate within in their family of origin, and they're bringing it into their business because they haven't healed it. And I often say, I spend a lot of time in my business, my clients, around strategy, standard operating procedures, ways of executing your strategic objectives, making sure that the team is well. There's a lot of that. But in the end, that's 20% of what makes a business really go well. The 80% is the mindset stuff. And if the owner is bringing in those sort of roles that they were playing in their family of origin and they're bringing it into their business, and that is a whole nother different situation.
So that's actually where the burnout archetypes were born, because I was working with my clients and I would see certain character traits or personality traits. And because I have a history in mental health when I was in the Army, and I'm seeing
the patterns.
And being oil and gas, it's all about patterns. It's all about flows, pressure, temperatures, and recognizing the patterns and the signs. Because running an oil and gas field is similar to like looking at numbers for your business. All you see in the control room is numbers. So just like if you're looking at email, all you're seeing is open rates. But yet you have to go beneath the surface. Okay, why is my open rate only at 1%? And like you go in and you dig in deeper and then you diagnose. But you're seeing, let's be honest, when you're running your business, you're looking at analytics, they're just numbers. They give you the data and then you have to go and interpret it, which is what I had been doing for years in oil and gas. So when I started working in business, I had my business for a couple of years. Like I said, I was in multi-level marketing for a whole number of years, and I was looking at that avenue to help me get out of, because I didn't know that I could be a coach, I could be a consultant, I could do these other things, have like a business, because I was only introduced to multi-level marketing, network marketing. And it was so funny, people that introduced me to network marketing, they're like, oh, you can make a couple $100 a month. And I was like, how much I make? That's not going to help me.
It's not going to pay the bill.
You can do this full time. I'm like, no. In order for me to go full time, I probably have to be platinum or whatever, or platinum diamond, whatever. In those things.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
go on
when
the
I
stage
get
and accept the rewards.
Right. I have to be at that level in order for me to quit my job. So it was always a losing battle for me, and I would get discouraged and try different companies. And for me, when you were talking about life plan and business vision, I was like, whatever one will give me the money, then I can leave my job. Sometimes when people, I don't know, let me know what your clients, when they are experiencing some of those chaotic symptoms, and especially with that cash flow issue, is it because they started a business that the only business vision that they had was to make money, had not a whole lot of, I would say, skin in the game or interest in the product or their service that they were selling. It was just the means to an end in order to go from the kettle to the frying pan, essentially.
People have their own motivations for starting. I personally don't think that the motivation just to sort of not work in corporate or not have to, so I can leave your job, I don't find that motivation or that reason to be strong enough to keep one in it. It might get you to start a business that you have been thinking would be a great business, but to keep you in it, at some point, one must evolve into more wise. And I'll never poo-poo on someone saying, I started my business because I just no longer wanted to work for someone else. That's fine. But now that you have been it, what are the other whys? When you are the one who's responsible for making sure that payroll hits, when you're the one who's responsible for paying the vendor, and you're the one who's responsible for making sure that whatever product or service your customer or client needs gets delivered, the buck stops with you, then I don't want to work in corporate, or is not enough. You need something else to keep it going. And so while I really love it when a lot of the people that work with us, that come to us as clients, have a very large vision for their companies and they have an idea that they think could serve the world.
Yeah.
But I've also interacted with people who started their business because I just wanted to not have to work for someone else. But as they began to implement the things into their business, they're like, oh, this is like for real. I could really make this something where I am contributing to the world. It's a great product. It's a great idea. It's a great service, and it evolves. So we are where we are, and you accept people where they are, but you can't, it's the same thing, like you either growing or you're dying. You can't stay stagnant. So if this is your entry point into business ownership, by all means, I get it. I believe the idea of working for oneself and building something better is noble. It really is noble. At the same time, as we grow, as we evolve, as we stretch, I would really hope that reasons for being expand as well.
And I realize that's the reason why none of these network marketing companies worked for me. Although I liked the product, I was like, well, that wasn't a big enough why.
Yeah, I get it. And when you start thinking about how we start going back to life plan, the reality is there's different levels of our existence. There's a level where we are at survival mode.
Yep.
And survival mode is actually a mode that does get us off our duffs. It's like we've got to put food on the table. We must do what's necessary to survive. And so whatever sort of lackadaisical behavior one might be existing, when you're in survival mode, you do things fast, quick, and in a hurry that you wouldn't do before.
Yeah.
So that's the stage that one is at. However, when you then move into, I saw this great quote, those quotes on Instagram. It was like, what got you here to this place was survival mode, but what's going to get you to the next stage can no longer be motivated by survival. It must be motivated by something else. It's because the person who we are, if you reckon, we're all evolving as business owners and as human beings. So what got us to the place where we're at is not going to get us to the place that we want to be in the future. And so whether it means that one got you from survival mode, now you're in a different place. So sometimes when business owners come to me and they're like, everything was going well. I built this business, been in it for 3 years and blah, 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 working, but then it just stopped working. Start doing the research and you realize it's because that 80%, they're still operating off of survival mode, even though that's not who they are any longer. But the strategies, the tactics, the way of being is in that survival mode space. Yeah. So if even being aware of recognizing, okay, I'm in survival mode because this is the stage of life that I am or whatever. But at some point, there is going to be a shift. It's like when you drive an automatic or a stick shift. You have to feel it. You got to know when you got to move the shift up, because if you don't, it's going to ruin the transmission. So
I've done that. A car, but on friends' cars.
I think being sensitive, if anyone listening is feeling something is changing, is shifting, I feel a bit chaotic, but I can't identify where that is. It could very well be that you are shifting into a new stage, into a new way of being, but you're still behaving like you are in the stage that you once were, but you actually are not in that space any longer, but you're still behaving that way. So then, of course, there's going to be chaos.
And that cognitive dissonance is happening. And one of my coaches, when I was going through my coaching certification, they said that change is like a rubber band. And they actually demonstrated it where it was like those workout rubber band thing. So one coach was holding one side and the other coach was inside and then pulling the rubber band this way. For those of you who are listening, stretching a rubber band between two people. He said, like, the further we go, right, the stronger the resistant band is to pulling us back to where we used to be, because our brains like status quo.
Yeah.
Right? Our brain is like, let's get back to homeostasis. This is where it's comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like you said, if you have a life plan, if you have a vision and a mission, and you're supposed to be here, you need to push past that resistance and get to that place, because otherwise you will be just doing this, be yo-yoing back and forth. Yes, this is where my comfort zone is, but this is where I need to be. This is where my plan and purpose is for my life. And there is, I believe, that there is innate purpose and vision that is implanted into us by our Lord and Savior, God, Christians. He creates us. He sees us in the womb. He knew who we were when he created us. And when we're not feeling that purpose, then that's why we have that cognitive dissonance. And that's why oil and gas, I was like, clocking in every day. But I'm like, I don't even want to be here. I mean, I became good at what I was because I had learned in my family of origin how to adapt in order to succeed. So it's very adaptable. And I was able to adapt. But then the longer I stayed in that environment, the higher I climbed up the ladder, more I realized you get up the ladder, there's more responsibility, more stuff on your plate. I was like, dude, this is heavy. I don't want to grow this muscle. Say you're trying to build up your legs and you keep doing squats or whatever. I don't want my legs to get bigger. I actually want biceps. I'm working out the wrong muscle. That's what I felt. I was climbing up this ladder for what? There were other people, my peers, colleagues, and like, this is great. They loved it. Love clocking in every day. They liked the
I have a really dear friend, was a bridesmaid at her wedding, and she does coaching with women in corporate, and she wrote a book basically with that whole concept. She's like, I think it was like right ladder, wrong wall or something. Great title, right? And the concept really was the ladder. It's not an issue of climbing the ladder. It's that the ladder is on the wrong wall. So of course you're not happy. You are unhappy because you are climbing a ladder on a wall you don't really want to climb.
Yeah. And that is whether you are in corporate or you have a business. If you have your ladder up the wrong wall and you're climbing this thing, it's like, for what? And that's what leads to the burnout or the feelings of burnout, the feelings of apathy, because you're striving, you're working hard to build something that at the end of the day, you even want to reap the rewards or the benefits from that field.
And you know, the other things that I have found, besides obviously, is, you know, we all have these talents, right?
Yes.
So then let's say someone's like, I've got this great talent for making jewelry. And it's sort of everyone in her life or his life tells them how great it is. You know, they enjoy it. It's kind of the way that they relax making the jewelry. It's just a joy for them. And then they're like, well, clearly then I need to start a business with it. So they hang a shingle out and they start selling jewelry. And there's two different things. One enjoys making jewelry, doesn't mean that someone should then be selling jewelry as their business. So you can extrapolate that in any industry, whether you are an attorney or whether you're an engineer and you decided to open business as an engineer, whatever it is, you baked cakes and you wanted to now have a bakery. I think a large part of it is just sitting back and looking at what I call the business model part of the business. Let's look at this. Why did you start this? Did you feel like there was a need? Are there enough people in your niche that need what it is you have, enough to support and build a business? Is the timing for the business a good time to build it? I remember hearing, oh my gosh, the gentleman's name is forgotten. He's the guy who founded Idea Lab, California. And I heard him speak, and he was talking about timing. He had come up with this great platform to bring comedic content to the populace in ways in streaming. But at that time, there was not enough internet bandwidth to support a streaming product. They put all this energy into getting the big heavy hitters in the comedy world. They had all the stuff was together, but the one little problem, the little glitch in the plan, was that there wasn't enough bandwidth to be able to stream it moving forward. And then a few years later, then you have YouTube came out, Google went out with YouTube, and then it was like a thing. Yeah. But he was behind, he was too early because the timing wasn't right. I remember listening to the owner or the founder of Shazam and the app where you can whatever. So before he sold it, though, when he was working, I mean, I just love his story. He had been trying to build that business for a good 20 years, but he was doing all this stuff, getting like the sound, the songs, the sound sampling, and that was going well. And he had gotten some investment in the business as well, and he was doing all these things. But at that time, smartphone hadn't come out yet. The first iPhone hadn't come out yet. So the business was more like you text something to, I think you get like a text back. Remember when you would
where you text to the server?
Right. And then you could get the, oh, this is a song. Yeah. But it wasn't like before where now you can pull the phone up. And so that again was a timing thing, but he was so vested in the idea that he had a job outside of it, and then he just kept tweaking it, making sure they were getting all the songs in the library so that when the technology caught up to it, then bam, he was ready to go. I bring those two stories up to say, these are some of the things that you need to think about when you're thinking about the product formulation of your business. That could be the reason why you are having a cash flow issue, because it may not be about sales. Everyone assumes it's a sales issue, or I need more leads, or I need this or whatever. That may be it, but that to me is, it's almost like you have a backache and you go to the doctor and say, oh, I have a backache. I just need to get my chiropractor to do an adjustment. But the backache might be because your kidneys are messed up. You don't know, you're self-diagnosing what the problem is. But again, fish can't see water. You are in there, there's chaos happening in the business. There's a symptom of chaos, which is not scaling or having a cash problem. And you're thinking, well, I think I know the problem. The problem is because I need to have more marketing, or I need to improve a better sales process. When in the end, the real problem is that your product formulation hasn't really been thought through enough to know that there are not really enough people to buy what you need. Or maybe it's that your product is fantastic, but the way it's actually positioning it's different. Yeah. Maybe the way that you have created the product itself, like an actual hardcore product, may not be good, but if you tweak it a little, it might fix. The reason why I'm saying all of these things is because we assume we know. I go on WebMD all the time, and I'm just like, see, here are my symptoms. What's my problem? Right. It can go anywhere from you're going to be dying to this is just like a minor issue. I don't know.
Put a Band-Aid on it.
So what I need to do is to be able to pause a bit, address, trying to see if a professional can come in and be able to help you figure out what really is the core problem of the business, then fix that. But if you don't, then you're still stuck with, I can't tell you, there are people who come to me at times, they're in such a bad state where they're just like, I'm going to close down shop because clearly I wasn't meant to be, this wasn't meant to be, this was a bad decision. And it really is, okay, I understand the frustration of wanting to close down because it's such a thing. And again, the number of companies that close down and don't survive after some number of years are real. At the same time, when you see the symptom of chaos, address it as soon as you possibly can, become aware of it, and then find out what the core reason, the fundamental, what's the true culprit, the true culprit that's causing the chaos, fix that. Then you can thrive and you can grow and you can live a life that's, you can breathe and your business can run smoothly.
And that's what I was trying to do with the business burnout archetypes, to help people to understand, okay, maybe it's like my personality types. I talk a lot about when we buy from the gurus and we buy a program and they have it all laid out. Here's the plan. A, B, C, D, and you try to follow it to the letter, but your personality type doesn't work well with that marketing strategy.
Right.
Yeah, you should go live video and you hate showing up on video. It's not going to translate.
The gospel right now. I mean, because it's true. People's personalities play out in the business.
And when, going back to family of origin, a lot of the personality types, a lot of it is nature, some of it is nurture, we've experienced. So like the shadow side of each archetype, and the shadow side of each archetype really talks about some of the, I call it trauma. Some people get triggered by the word trauma, but just
word
trauma that was introduced to us, and we adapted, we shifted in order to survive, and that became our norm. We have walls that we put up around certain things because that's what we were conditioned. There was a conditioned response that we had growing up. And now we pull things from our family of origin into our business. And we wonder, we have a cash flow issue. Well, maybe you have money mindset issues where you saw a parent that gave everything away. And or you maybe you grew up in poverty. I did, you know? And then having a six-figure income because my parents are like, you're crazy to give that up because we came from nothing and now you have what we've always wanted to have and you're ready to give that up for what? So this dream that you have of helping people. Like, what really is that? But I knew I had a calling on my life to help people. That's why I got into the mental health field when I joined the Army, because I knew I had a calling on my life to help people. And to understand I have the gift of discernment. I can see things in people. So it's easy for me to diagnose things. People are ready to admit that if I see something, that they're like, that is the problem. Us as coaches, we can see things, whether you're looking at someone's business or like I have some kind of discernment into what's really going on beneath the surface inside of the person and why they may be struggling with their business. We can talk about marketing tactics. We can talk about business strategies and SOPs. And I've done that for the bulk of my entrepreneurial career. And it's having me shift into something deeper because while I was here helping people with marketing strategy, marketing operations, I love Zapier. I love setting up things on autopilot so that people can show up in their business and just focus on doing what they love, client work, whatever kind of business they have. Do the thing that they love so that all of the things that need to happen in a business behind the scenes is happening automatically, or like I said, have someone who that is their talent, that is their strength, taking care of it so that you can be in alignment, stand in your power, stand in your strength, and do the thing that you're called to do. So that was good for me for a while because I felt like I was supporting these people and allowing them to do what they love and what they're called to do. But then as I started working with some of my clients and the same chaotic issues would come up, and I'm like, no, there's a root problem here. But because you see me as just a consultant, I can't go deeper with you and fix the root cause. So therefore, I shifted my business model. I mean, I was already a certified coach before I went into full-time project management as a contractor for all of these different businesses. But it would hurt my heart. Again, back to the life plan. No, I know I have a calling to help people to deal with their deeper issues, the things that are really driving them, whether it's driving to success or driving to chaos.
I think, Kylie, as you think about, to your point, you're talking about if people are willing to hear you, I often sort of, when people say, well, do you think I need to hire someone to help me with this particular problem? Whatever the problem is in the business, because if you're noticing the symptoms of chaos showing up, then it's time to address it. However, if you don't feel like you are coachable, even if it's not a coach that you're hiring, you may hire a fractional CFO, but that's what it needs. Sometimes that's what I need to recommend for my clients. Hire a CFO, hire a fractional CFO. But in the end, if you're not coachable, if you're not in a posture to be able to receive whatever advice your CFO is recommending on whatever the needs to happen in the business to get things right, then you're still going to be stuck in that situation. Now, of course, we can talk a lot about, okay, because sometimes people are like, oh, I'm coachable. And then they're in it and you're like, no, you're kind of not. But
yes, you're testing me right now.
Resistance. But I think that's a question, if someone is in the audience and they're thinking, wait, I have some chaos happening in the business. Clearly, whether you raise your hand on one of the four or all of the four or more than the four, if you identify and recognize there's some chaos in the business and you acknowledge that the number one reason, top 4 reasons why businesses fail is because of those 4 reasons, and you want your business to survive, so you then acknowledge that you do need help because fish can't see water, then the next question must be, but am I coachable? Because in the end, whoever you need to hire for what it is that you need to hire for, you're going to need to be able to relinquish some control to someone who has the ability to not only have the expertise, but also be able to come in and not be like not in your water. I had a mentor years ago, and she would say, so I'm not getting in the quicksand with you. You realize that, right? Because you're in quicksand. If I come in the quicksand with you, then we're all in the quicksand together. So the person who you're coming to help you to fix a symptom of chaos and ultimately a foundational chaotic reason why that's causing chaos in your business, then there must be a recognition that, one, the person's not going to come into the quicksand with you, and 2, that requires a bit of being able to be coachable to be able to relinquish that. And if you feel there's some resistance there, even as you're thinking about it, then that is worth exploring in your own self to figure out, what is this? Same reason we talked about the roles that we bring from our family of origin into our businesses. That resistance might be coming from the roles and beliefs and behaviors that we develop from our family of origin that we're bringing now into the business that's not serving any longer. It's not serving you any longer without hiring someone that can really fix the problem in the business. If not, you keep going on a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then the problem, like your doctor told you, I mean, I don't know if I can fix it. It really is, it stacks. These problems stack in business, and at some point you just can't fix it, or it's so big of a deal that there's a whole revamp that needs to happen. But I'm a humongous champion for small and mid-sized companies. I think that you start looking at 2/3 of the U.S. employee workforce is hired by a small business. 99% of businesses are small businesses, not just in the U.S., but across the globe. It's really important. The role that small and mid-sized companies play in our economy is vital. So if you begin to look at your business as the important entity that it is, then you can't really ignore it as a symptom of chaos.
Now, and to your point, I don't think a lot of people understand that some of these bigger corporations, the shops or the stores are run by franchisees. When you're saying small and medium businesses, that's true. So even for oil and gas, a lot of the gas stations that you see, they are running. And that's why you'll see different numbers at the pump at each station, because each franchisee runs their station however they want to run it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, think about US, I think the number is more like 95% of businesses are small businesses, or 90%. But I've got clients all over the globe. In Europe, it's 99% of businesses are small businesses. Wow. So this is not like, that we love to think of our business. As you go through the stage of business, you begin to build your business and you recognize you're building an entity outside of yourself. That is the goal here. You're building an entity outside of yourself so that you can decide to sell it if you want to. Even the idea of not having an exit plan, it's so vital to have an exit plan when you start your business. And if you don't have one, start building one now, because it allows for you to begin looking at your business as an entity, as a masterpiece that you're painting outside of yourself. But I know that early stages, a lot of the business owners have an emotional connection to their business. It's sort of their baby, which is totally fine and wonderful and lovely. At the same time, it also is an important source of employment. It's an important source of resources to vendors. It's an important source of taxes to build infrastructure in our local and national communities. It's an important source of innovation. The small businesses are the biggest source of innovation in the world, not just in the US economy, but in the global economy. Small and medium-sized businesses are very, very important to our economy. It's your baby, but it's an important thing that you are creating outside of yourself. And if you were creating this thing and you saw some symptoms of chaos happening, you'd fix that in a heartbeat because it's your masterpiece. But I think sometimes shame shows up and people don't want to acknowledge because they have it, their business is so connected to them. Yeah. So I would say, remember, your business is an entity outside of yourself. So if there are some things that are happening in the business, it's not you. You're not having a cash flow issue. Your business is having a cash flow issue. Now, you may have some personal finance situations that are showing up, but I think it's really important to separate as best you can your business from yourself so that you don't have any shame associated with the fact that things are going poorly or not going poorly. The biggest companies in the world that are most respected blue chip companies out there are having problems. I used to consult in large companies. I used to consult in large NGOs. So this is not like a small business problem. It's a business problem that if you address it as a business problem, not as messed up, not good enough, imposter syndrome, that's to bed. It has nothing to do with you. Now, if you're bringing your family of origin mindset stuff into play and you're causing some of the problems, and we have to do a little bit of shifting, but it's still not you. It's the business that has this problem. You can address it as an entity outside of yourself without bringing in the shame. If you do feel some shame about it, you're not alone. This problem is not, Brene Brown always talks about one of the biggest antidotes to shame is me too, is just having someone say, I have that issue too. So just so if you're listening and you're feeling the shame right now, you're feeling like someone is stepping on your toes, me too, right? Everybody is having some challenge in their business. It's an inherent part of business. What I'm saying is it doesn't have to be so chaotic that you end up having to close down shop, because this is what happens when you extrapolate these chaotic symptoms further down the line. So yes, it's a problem. It's happening in the business. Separate yourself from it, address the problem, and ask yourself, am I coachable? Yes, I am, because I'm going to say you are.
Listening to a podcast right now, you are probably coachable.
Yes. Exactly.
To your point about babies, so I'm a recent empty nester. My babies have grown up and moved out of the house, and you look at it like, hey, your babies are babies for a little while. If you're in the beginning stages of business, just like how you're explaining, like, yes, small business is supposed to be chaotic. Yes, having a newborn does invite chaos into your life. Babies are up all night, blah, 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 blah. But as you train up your child, you are training them to become independent when they are an adult. You're not breastfeeding forever. So if you do want to think of your business as your baby, think of it as, yes, it is a baby now if you're just starting, but eventually you want exit plan. Kids gotta move out someday.
And you have a thought, they're going to exit at 18 and then they may come back at 22, but at some point they're going to exit. So you need to have that exit plan. Talking about the stages of business, and there's a gentleman who wrote the book, In Pursuit of Prime is the name of the book. His name is Idis, I think is the last name. He's a brilliant business thinker. But the name of the book is In Pursuit of Prime. And in that book, he puts out what is really considered one of the scales of identifying business growth. and also what stage businesses are at and what are some of the problems. His theory is that there are some normal problems that happen at each stage of business. Yes. And so it's not about saying, oh, look at me, I have these problems, blah, blah, blah. We don't want you to live in them and be like, yeah, it's normal to be in chaos, or so I'm not going to fix them. At the same time, there's no need to have shame around it either, because there are some normal business problems at different stages of business. Yes. However, what I love about this book is it's really identifies the areas, because he's saying there are some normal business problems and then there are some abnormal business problems. Yeah. And so he really sort of walks you through a bit, be like, here are the abnormal business problems, and this is how you get back in line. And then the idea is Pursuit of Prime is the name of the book, is really the part that is the best stage, but he, in his theory, is the best stage of where businesses should be. That's when you kind of have more professional management in the company. Founders have kind of pretty much taken a step back, or they may be like the chairman of the board, but they're not like in the business per se, and different stages. Look, in the end, all big businesses that we admire were once small businesses. And not everybody, who has a small business right now wants it to grow to Amazon size or whatever. The point is knowing where you want it to be, what kind of business, which goes back to the life plan and the business vision part of it. And then knowing what stage of the business that you are and the problems that you're facing, how normal are they, how abnormal are they? And I would posit on this call that if you are experiencing these problems that I've identified and they're consistently happening and there's no let up, then these are abnormal problems. But I think, just to your point, there are stages of business, and many people recognize them and codify them, and recognizing what stage you are helps you to understand a bit more about what your problems are facing. But in the end, the problem is the business's problem. You are the caretaker of the business. You are the creator of the business. You are the artist of the business. I think I heard Jay Abraham, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he said something about, his description was a business is like a hedge fund, and the business owner is the investor. And you got to invest wisely in the business in order to be able to. So however you want to see your business, whether you're looking at it as a hedge fund or whatever it is that works for you, it's not you. If your business fails, it's not you. If your business has chaos, it's not you. But you are the caretaker of it. And it's your responsibility to identify that there is some chaos and fix it.
I love all of that. And to that point, you have a very awesome resource that talks about a lot of what we talked about today. And we went through the 4 business struggles and some ways to look at your root issues in a deeper way. But what is that thing that you want to give to the audience today that really explains more in depth what we talked? Because honestly, we barely scratched the surface.
Yes, you're right, Kylie. I have a book, an ebook or PDF that I think, if the conversation that we've been having today sort of steps on your toe a little, you're feeling a little bit of, then I do have a great resource for you. The title is The 8 True Culprits Causing Chaos in Your Business. The 8 True Culprits Causing Chaos in Your Business. In that particular book, what you will find is I identify what I think are the 8 true fundamental things that you need to be paying attention to. And then it also identifies what are some of the ways that you can begin to fix them. It's really been helpful. It was just really me pulling out from my experience working with businesses over the going on 15 years of what I found to be the real causes. So if that is you and you feel as if, I think I need to figure out which one of these is actually happening in my business, the website is www.nobusinesschaos.com. Nobusinesschaos.com. Why? Because business chaos is the enemy of your business. So nobusinesschaos.com. You can find it there, and hopefully I believe it'll help you quite a bit.
And business chaos is the number 1 cause for burnout. So, my gosh, thank you so much, Kerry-Ann. This is such a great conversation.
I
Great
enjoyed
conversation.
it. I have really enjoyed it. And hearing your stories around how you maneuvered out of corporate, I think it's a testament because clearly things could have gone a different direction had you not taken control. So it's been a real joy to hear it. Obviously not joy to know it happened, but to sort of see how you're able to get it and then now been able to help so many people
Yeah.
understand it.
And I realized that not a lot of people understand the symptoms of burnout when they're going
Yes.
through it because I had no idea. And when I went back to work, it was so clear to me because I studied when I was out of work and I was trying to heal my body and repair my body. The goal was to get back. Goal was always to get back because that's my life, that's my career. When I went back, gosh, I could see the signs and symptoms presenting in a lot of my colleagues. Like, goodness. And then for me, the writing was on the wall. I was like, I cannot stay in this environment. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm out. I'm out.
I'm out.
Yes.
Wow. Well, kudos to you. And now your clients get a chance to really get the benefits of your experience and your training. And I think that's fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming today. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Burnt Out Entrepreneur Podcast. Go ahead and catch us on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. And here is to you healing and recovering for burnout. Talk to you again next time. Bye.
Bye.